Birthdays are supposed to be the one day a year you feel like you matter. A day where, even if the whole world forgets you, your own family doesn't. That's the beautiful lie I used to tell myself, in my house. However, a birthday was just another reason to be cruel, another chance to remind me of my place. I woke up that morning, my 26th birthday, with a small, stupid flutter of hope in my chest. I was an adult now, not a child they could push around so easily. I whispered to myself in the quiet of my room, maybe today they'll change. Maybe this year will be different. Maybe they'd at least have the decency to say happy birthday without a sneer twisting their lips. The kitchen smelled of sizzling bacon and sweet maple syrup when I walked in, but I knew instantly that none of it was for me. Nicole, my younger sister, was perched at the table like a princess on her throne. She was draped in a silk robe, her long nails perfectly manicured, her eyes glued to the glowing screen of her phone. In front of her, my mother placed a plate piled high with fluffy pancakes, drizzled generously with syrup and topped with a mountain of fresh strawberries and whipped cream. My dad, ever the loyal servant, poured her a tall glass of freshly squeezed orange juice, chuckling at something on her phone as if she were the most clever queen in the world. When I quietly slid into the empty chair at the far end of the table, Nicole didn't even bother to look up from her screen. She just muttered, a slight annoyance in her voice, "Don't sit so close. Your gloominess makes the pictures look cheap." I swallowed the familiar sting of her words and managed to whisper, my voice barely audible, "It's my birthday today." Mom finally turned her gaze toward me, her lips curling into a disgusted frown. "So, you think that makes you special or something?" Dad let out a short, barking laugh. "Special? Trash doesn't magically turn into gold just because a day on the calendar flips over." Nicole snorted, not missing a beat as she snapped a picture of her perfect breakfast for her Instagram followers. "Happy birthday, Leech," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Congrats on being the exact same nothing you were yesterday." I sat there in silence, my eyes fixed on the empty spot in front of me. There was no plate, no glass, not even a napkin. It was as if I was a ghost at their table. I decided to try one last time, my voice even softer than before. I thought maybe we could have breakfast together, just for once. That's when it happened. My dad grabbed a dirty plate from the sink, one crusted with the dried remains of last night's dinner. He walked over to me, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. He slammed it into my face with such force that the room spun violently and stars exploded behind my eyes. The old ceramic shattered on impact, and a blinding white-hot crack of pain shot through my jaw. I crumpled to the floor, my hands flying to my face, the metallic taste of my own blood flooding my mouth. My mother's laughter rang out, sharp and piercing like broken glass. "That's what trash gets on its birthday," she shrieked. Nicole clapped her hands together, squealing with delight as if she were cheering at the most entertaining show she'd ever seen. My dad leaned over me, his breath sour with morning coffee, his voice a low, hateful sneer. "That's your gift, Leech. Consider yourself celebrated." The three of them laughed together, a terrible harmony of cruelty, while I lay broken on the cold kitchen floor. My jaw throbbed with a deep, sickening ache, and hot tears burned my eyes. But something else broke in me that day, something that wasn't just bone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry out. I didn't fight back. I simply pushed myself up and crawled to my room, every small movement sending a fresh wave of stabbing pain through my jaw. I shut the door quietly behind me, their hateful laughter still carrying down the hallway, echoing through the walls of a house that had never once felt like a home. In the blurry reflection of my mirror, I saw that my face was already swelling, my jaw sitting at a crooked, unnatural angle. The pain was blinding, but the silent, cold rage building underneath it was sharper, clearer than anything I had ever felt before. I pressed a bag of frozen peas against my cheek, staring at my distorted reflection until the tears dried on my face. "This is it," I whispered through the agony. "This is the last time." They thought they had broken me. They thought they had turned my birthday into just another scar to add to their collection. But what they had really done was give me the one thing I needed most, a reason to stop quietly surviving. They had finally given me a reason to fight back. As the night settled over the house, their faint laughter still a ghost in the walls, I began to plan. I wasn't planning for survival anymore. I was planning for revenge. The swelling in my jaw took days to go down. Eating was a torture. So I survived on thin broth and cold applesauce, while my parents and Nicole sat at the dining table, loudly devouring steak, roasted chicken, and rich chocolate cake. Every loud, happy bite they took was another sharp reminder that they weren't just cruel, they enjoyed my suffering. When my mom saw me wince as I tried to swallow some soup, she smirked. "Don't grimace at the table, Hannah. People might think we actually abuse you." She paused for effect. "And really, what's a little cracked jaw? Nicole broke a nail last week and handled it with much more grace than you." Nicole held up her perfectly manicured hand, tapping a freshly polished nail against her crystal water glass. "That's because I'm worth fixing," she said coolly. "She's not," Dad roared with laughter, pounding his fist on the table so hard the plates jumped. "That's right, you patch a queen's crown, but you throw trash in the bin. That's just the natural order of life." I didn't say a word. My silence was a fuel for their pride. They mistook my stillness for defeat, not for strategy. By the end of the week, the grand plans for Nicole's upcoming birthday began. They were throwing her a massive, extravagant party in the very same house where I couldn't even get a single birthday candle. My mom fluttered around town, buying expensive decorations, helium balloons, and cases of champagne with the money I had helped earn through years of working thankless side jobs. She ordered a custom cake, a towering three-tiered creation with Nicole's smiling face printed on it in edible glitter. Dad was in the backyard, stringing up fairy lights, his voice booming with pride. "Only the best for our princess, not like the leech who wants pity just for existing." Nicole paraded through the living room, showing off 3 different expensive outfits she couldn't decide between. "This one screams queen, this one screams legend, and this one," she said, pausing to look at me, "just screams, I'm not Hannah." Their laughter filled every corner of the house, bouncing off the walls like sharp knives, and while they laughed, I watched, I listened, I observed. I noticed how desperately Nicole depended on these parties, on the constant approval from her shallow friends who only ever came for the free food and alcohol. Without the show, without the audience, she was nothing. I noticed how my mom's pride wasn't in herself, but in how other people admired her perfect daughter. Her entire sense of self was built on Nicole's fake perfection. If Nicole's shine ever dulled, so would hers. And my dad, he needed to be in control. He needed to be the loudest, the strongest, the most feared man in the room. If people ever saw him as a failure, unable to protect his perfect little household, he would completely fall apart. For the first time in my life, I realized something powerful. They had taught me exactly how to destroy them. Their own cruelty had shown me all of their weaknesses. While they were busy stringing up lights and frosting cakes, I was in the shadows, carefully sharpening my own knives. I started with Nicole. One evening, she left her phone unattended while she soaked in a bubble bath. It was the opening I needed. I quickly opened her messages, taking screenshots of the horrible things she said about her so-called best friends, mocking them, calling them parasites behind their backs, laughing about how stupid they were for worshipping her. I didn't send the screenshots out, not yet. The timing had to be perfect. Next was my mother. She loved to brag to her friends at her weekly card games about her perfect finances, claiming she had never been in debt, never needed help from anyone. But I knew the truth. I found it in a shoebox stuffed in the back of her closet. Stacks of unopened envelopes, unpaid bills, maxed out credit card statements, and desperate final notices. I carefully slipped one of the most threatening letters into her handbag just before she left for her card night. She didn't notice it until one of her nosy friends pulled it out, her eyebrows raised in surprise. When she came home that night, her face was pale, and her voice was sharp with a new kind of fear. "Which one of you touched my things?" she snapped, her eyes glaring at both me and Nicole. Nicole just laughed. "You probably just embarrassed yourself naturally, Mother." My mom didn't laugh back. The small seed of humiliation had been planted. And then there was Dad. He strutted around like he was an untouchable king. But the first knew his throne was built on a foundation of lies. He bragged to his friends about paying off debts that I had secretly been covering for years with my own money. Without me, he was nothing but a loud man yelling in an empty, failing house. So, I stopped making his life easy. I stopped hiding the late notices that came in the mail. I left them out in plain sight, taping them to the fridge, stacking them on the coffee table, and even shoving one under his favorite recliner cushion. When his friends dropped by for a beer, they saw them all. "Having a bit of trouble, old man," one of them smirked before leaving. My dad's face turned a deep, blotchy red. That night, he stormed through the house, screaming at everyone, who's trying to make me look weak, who is turning people against me. I sat silently in a corner, my face perfectly calm. My silence made him angrier than ever because, for the first time, he had no control over me. The night of Nicole's party finally arrived. Guests poured into our home. The music blasted from huge speakers, and fake laughter rang through the house. Mom fluttered around with trays of champagne flutes. Dad barked orders at the caterers, and Nicole stood in the center of it all, basking in the attention, her glittering dress sparkling under the party lights. They had no idea I was watching from the shadows, waiting for the precise moment when their perfect world would not just crack, but shatter into a million pieces. Because this time, I wasn't the one with the broken jaw. This time, I was the one holding the hammer. Nicole's party glowed like a cheap circus. The backyard was covered in fairy lights, the speakers pounded with a heavy bass, and every shallow friend she had ever collected circled her like moths drawn to a flame. Mom floated from one group to another, bragging about her perfect daughter, her smile wide but stretched thin and brittle. Dad yelled orders at the servers, acting like he owned the entire night. I remained in the shadows near the back door, my jaw still a little sore, but healed enough for me to smirk. My silence was my greatest weapon. The first crack in their perfect world appeared when Nicole grabbed the microphone to make a toast. To me, she purred, lifting her champagne glass high into the air, the one who actually makes this family proud. Unlike some people, she let her eyes dart over to me, standing alone in the corner. Some people who should have been tossed out with the trash years ago. The crowd of her friends laughed. My mom clapped proudly. My dad roared, "That's my girl." But they had no idea what was coming next. Nicole's phone, which she had left on the table beside the cake, buzzed. One of her most loyal friends picked it up and her face froze. "What is this?" she asked, her voice suddenly loud as she scrolled through the screen. It was the screenshots, the ones I had been saving. The friend's voice rose with anger. "You called me a parasite. You said my family smells like garbage. You said I was only good for free food." The crowd instantly quieted. Nicole rushed over, the color draining from her face. "Wait, no, that was a joke," she stammered. But it was too late. Another girl held up her phone. She called all of us pathetic. Look, screens lit up all across the yard as I pressed send, forwarding every last screenshot to every single person at the party all at once. Nicole's glittering, perfect face crumpled. "No, please," she begged. "You don't understand." But they did understand. One by one, her followers, her worshippers, walked away from her, disgust curling on their lips. The partygoers she lived for were abandoning her, leaving her completely alone. My mom rushed forward, desperately trying to save face. "She didn't mean it. She's just stressed." But before she could finish her lie, a woman from her bridge group stepped forward, waving one of the overdue envelopes. "Oh, is she stressed like this?" the woman asked loudly. "Overdue credit cards, loans, collection notices. I thought you said you never touch debt." "Evelyn." Gasps rippled through the remaining guests. My mother's smile cracked and fell apart. Her perfect image was shredded in front of the very people she lived to impress. She turned on me, her eyes wild with hate. "You," she hissed. "You did this." I didn't answer her. I just smiled faintly. My dad, red-faced with fury, tried to take back control. He stomped toward me, the veins in his neck bulging. "Enough of your little games. You'll clean this mess up. You will fix this." But then, the final, crushing blow landed. His oldest friend, a man he always tried to impress, stepped up, holding one of the foreclosure notices I had taped to the fridge. He shook his head slowly, a look of pity on his face. "All those years you spent bragging about paying off your debts. Turns out your other daughter was the one keeping you afloat. Without her, you're nothing but a broke bully in a house you're about to lose." The yard buzzed with whispers. The sound of laughter returned, but this time it was sharp and pointed, aimed not at me, but at him. For the very first time in my life, I saw the look of a man who had been stripped completely bare. Nicole was sobbing in a corner, her black mascara streaking down her ruined face. My mom's hands trembled as she tried to gather the pieces of her shattered reputation. My dad stood frozen, his fists clenched, completely powerless, and I stood there, calm and steady, the one thing in their lives they could never truly break. My mother stumbled forward, her voice breaking. "Please, Hannah, please help us fix this. We'll lose everything." Nicole crawled toward me on the dirty ground, her glittering dress smeared with dirt. "Don't let them leave me," she cried. "Please, you're my sister." My dad's voice finally cracked. low and desperate. Just one more payment, one more chance. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. I laughed. It was a sound colder and harder than anything they had ever thrown at me. Don't I? The silence that followed was heavier than any punch, sharper than any broken plate. I walked right past them, through the wreckage of their perfect little party, my head held high. Behind me, I could hear the desperate cries of a family finally tasting the gutter they had thrown me into for 26 years. But I didn't turn around. Revenge was never about proving I was better than them. It was about making them choke on the ugly truth they had tried to bury me under. And judging by their silence, their tears, and their pathetic begging, that truth was finally louder than their laughter could ever be again.